We'll be getting to our guest in just a few minutes. A couple of things I want to remind people of today. First of all, my friend Dr. Eric F. Jones is still looking for new patients. He has a holistic, systemic approach to wellness, and he's been in practice now for about a quarter of a century. With master's and doctoral degrees in marriage and family therapy, Dr. Eric F. Jones uses methods of alternative healing, naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual cognitive self-regulation, and naturopathy to help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. He has evening and Saturday appointments available, 731-7178. And you go to Facebook, you can find him there as well if you just type this in. Eric F. Jones, PhD, mental health and wellness therapist. He's got two offices, both of those right here in Twin Falls, Idaho. 824, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Caller referenced Al Franken. Franken used to host, remember Air America? He was hosting a program on Air America. And right after Rush Limbaugh made fun of what they were doing, he came on the air and started referring to Rush Limbaugh as a doper because, remember, Limbaugh back in the mid-'90s got addicted to painkillers. And for a long time, Limbaugh was off the air. I mean, he had to take a long sabbatical because of it. And they even tried to prosecute him, although that fell apart because I had a lawyer friend say, look, when you're in that kind of pain, no one's going to be sending you off to jail for looking for some relief. So here's Al Franken calling Rush Limbaugh a doper. Well, back in 1982, he used to actually have a partner named Tom Davis. They performed under the roadshow Franken and Davis. And in 1982, Franken and Davis came to my college campus and performed a show. And my buddy, Dan Dolan, who lived in the room next to me in the dormitory, Dan was always throwing a party of one sort or another, and somehow word must have gotten around to Franken and Davis, because after their show, there was a knock at the door. Dan opens the door. Who comes walking in but Franken and Davis? It's Al Franken, now U.S. Senator from Minnesota, and he said they proceeded to sit down, whipped out a joint that was the size of a cigar, and started smoking it, which immediately brought the wrath of the dorm director and other people who picked up the odor, and they came charging in, and there was quite a scene about all of this. So the man calling Rush Limbaugh a doper has a bit of a history himself. Franken appearing at the convention last night. I want you to take a listen for a moment.
Clearly, Donald Trump's enormous, dare I say, huge success as a businessman qualifies him to be president. And if you believe that, I've got some delicious Trump steaks to sell you.
Now, he also used to be a writer for Saturday Night Live, which hasn't been a very good program now for about 35, 36 years. And now you can understand why, because I'm sure that you all sat there and you went, ha, 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 when you heard that one. I mean, what a knee slapper that was. That is Al Franken. Likely burned off a lot of brain cells during his life. So you've got to be, a little leery of that fellow. Steve Millington is in the studio with us. It's coming up on 8:27. And you were just looking at a clipping, Wes Pruden at the Washington Times writing about Tim Kaine when he was running for governor in Virginia. Even though he's a Democrat, listening to his campaign commercials, he was running as a Republican, pro-life and...
Yeah, pro-life, a Christian. Faith is important to him. He opposes gay marriages. He wants to have restrictions on abortions. Holy cow, is this the same guy that they're introducing at the Democrat convention? My good gracious. Where did they find this guy?
His father-in-law was the governor of Virginia back about 1970 and was a Republican, a conservative.
Yeah, right.
But all I can think of is Tim Kaine is one of these types of politicians. He puts an index finger to his mouth and then holds it up to see which way the wind is blowing.
And that's where he goes.
Right. And so now, the latest is that Tim Kaine says that within 100 days of election, they will be looking to legalize all illegal immigrants in this country.
Yeah. In fact, if I could make a correction, I think you got that almost. It's not illegal immigrants. It's all immigrants.
Wow.
We're not going to we're going to take the stigma completely away, and you're all going to be legalized. And this term illegal immigrants is a thing of the past.
Of course, his in his home state and his ally, Terry McAuliffe, the now governor of Virginia, tried to get felons to vote as well.
Yeah, I noticed that the second appellate court said, no, Governor, you don't have the power to do that. Knock it off.
Right. And for the time being, I don't know if there's going to be any appeal or not.
There's not been any indication one way or the other.
I guess convicted criminals don't normally vote Republican, do they?
I would be surprised, frankly, if any of them voted Republican. That'd be a real upset, I think.
How do you get these guys to the polls, though? I mean, they get out of prison and normally they go back to their bad behavior. So if they're all sitting around smoking crack cocaine, how do you actually get them to show up and vote?
I think what they were thinking about was bringing a polling place to the prison, and the 11 or 12,000 folks incarcerated in the state of Virginia wouldn't have to leave the compound. They could just go down to the common area and vote right on site.
Tell them we can all have a couple of glasses of Raisin Jack afterward. And
Yeah.
We'll be,
Oh boy, what a deal! We can't beat that in industry. It's just.
We've got more coming up. We've got a break, but Steve's going to talk with us about the Dog and Pony Show in Philadelphia. And your observations from the other side, if you will, as a Republican.
Okay.
Steve is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Speaking of liberals right now, I think it's Thomas Friedman. No, it's Larry Sabato. Much better, is on TV right now. There's a slight resemblance. I didn't figure Thomas Friedman would be on Fox, but empty convention hall at the moment anyway, because the Democrats are all sleeping it off. So we've got more on the way in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Our guest is Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Joins us in studio on Tuesday mornings. I just quickly do want to mention, I believe Dr. Jonathan Tripp and family have returned from Nicaragua, where they have been on a mission trip, and the doctor or one of his associates scheduled to join us tomorrow morning between 8:30 and 9 o'clock from Tripp Family Medicine. And we'll be discussing a current medical issue, and that allows you to have an opportunity to telephone us and ask some questions if you've got a medical issue of your own. We do it every Wednesday between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. It's Better Health, brought to you by Tripp Family Medicine, across from the post office on Fillmore Street. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. And Steve Millington, of course, is going to be in studio Friday again. You'll be filling in for me because I had a comp day that I've got to burn up, and I've lost those comp days in the past. So you've graciously agreed to sit in on this Friday.
Yeah, when the cat's away, the mice will play. Man, we're going to have so much fun around here on Friday. It's not even going to be. Come Monday, when you try to come back to work, we're going to have this thing tore up so bad you won't even know what to do.
I expected that. We were talking off air a little bit about the Republicans having wrapped up, and first of all, you thought Donald Trump was a little too long-winded.
Oh boy, 75 minutes on an acceptance speech. I'm pretty diehard Republican. We got to do this thing. Be sure and get out and vote. 75 minutes. Holy cow! I mean, that's about the normal length of a pretty good feature movie. Holy cow, Donald, sit down. Be quiet. Let's get on with the show. Let the balloons fall out of the ceiling.
It was like he wanted to touch on every last detail and issue. He did.
And he did. You're exactly right. And he did. And okay, fine. I understand it's your big moment in your... Okay, fine. After 35, 40, 45 minutes, sit down. We're done. We don't need to go over it again and again and again. Let's get on the campaign trail. Let's paint the picture that we are the two or three things that Trump did say that I thought was really interesting. I'm on your side. That will probably resonate a lot between now and November. The other thing that I think is really, and we're seeing in the other news blurbs this morning, we got more terrorist attacks and more lawlessness from around the world. A deputy sheriff shot and killed in his backyard down in Texas. Give me a break. What is going on in this country? So Trump, I voted for Cruz. Okay, full disclosure, I voted for Cruz. He lost, and it's over. And now I've got a Trump sign in the garage, and it goes up about the time we start the county fair. The political season kicks off in earnest about the 1st of September, and there's going to be a Trump sign in the front yard.
I've got to just quickly remind people, too, that we will be broadcasting live from the county fair.
Yes, we will, from the Republican booth on Friday, September 2nd, I think, is the day, from 5 until 7 p.m. We've lined up. Senator Crapo will be there. We know that Brad Little will be there. All of our local legislators, everybody from District 23, 24, 25. The guys from 26 will be there. County officials will all be there, and they'll have their turn talking on air and visiting. 2 years ago when we did this, we had such a huge number of people gathered because all of the candidates for office were there. And then as people come by, they wanted to stop and talk and visit. And we just about created a traffic jam.
You know, we should be doing the show out there, I think, every day. But there's no activity really at 8 o'clock in the morning.
It doesn't get started till about 10 or noon or something like that, you know. So maybe we should kick Glenn Beck off the air those 4 or 5 days. You could show up out there about 4 in the afternoon and run from 4 to 7. You'd have a deal going, buddy.
Got about a minute before the break. We'll squeeze in a telephone caller. You're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley on KLIX.
Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Bill. Billy Dingus, just back from Cleveland yesterday, and it was a fabulous experience, and I wanted to give kudos to Cleveland. It was amazing, the hospitality and the security that we had there.
You know, and it used to be called the mistake on the lake, so they finally got it right.
Oh, you know, it's turned into a beautiful city, and they were really, yes, they got it right.
No. You were there in summer. You were there in summer. You were there in summer. It's not beautiful in January.
Oh, I imagine. But I did want to tell Steve that on the floor, that speech that Donald Trump gave was not too long. It was great. We enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. I was just sitting comfortably on the couch and watching it on the television, and maybe I was being a little too analytical, and I thought to myself, for heaven's sakes, Trump, you know, you've covered that once. What are you doing? But he would reinforce those key points, and the 2 or 3 major things that we hit, that he hit, was law and order, and that's going to become a greater issue, a greater campaign situation from now till November. Law and order.
Hold that thought. We'll get back to it.
Yeah, I thought we were on a hard break, aren't we?
I'm just telling anybody who says Cleveland's beautiful. I grew up 3 hours drive down the interstate. Trust me.
Well, in the summertime, but I agree with you. In the wintertime, oh my.
Steve Millington in studio with us. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. It's coming up at 8:44. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story. And just some breaking news. We're not going to dwell on this at the moment. I'll get back to it later in the program because Steve's talking convention politics with us. But you may have already seen the big headline on Drudge. Muslims behead priest in Normandy. That during a church, they stormed mass and they took hostages. I believe that the terrorists have now been killed. But this is part of the safe world that Barack Obama keeps telling us about because it's only the JV squad. And also very quickly, too, as well, just to remind you, one of our great friends on the program, Dr. Christine Pickup, is now the only locally owned independent hearing healthcare practice. She's the only person doing that in southern Idaho independently now. And if you're like most people, you think of hearing as something that happens in your ears, but it's what's between the ears that counts. The brain is where sound becomes the details. Your brain has to work harder to make that happen when you have hearing trouble. When the sound signals from your ears are compromised, your brain has to work even harder, filling in all of those gaps. That extra effort is what it really comes down to. I mean, you're taxing yourself. Don't let your brain down. Take care of your hearing with the help of Mount Harrison Audiology. Call the office, 312-0957. So looking at what the Democrats are doing in contrast, for all the talk about how disorganized Republicans were and what a mess it was and everything else, Democrats are dealing with tropical heat. It's like Thailand there in Philadelphia this week.
And I understand yesterday afternoon, I don't know what time it was, but they had a downpour, one of those cloudbursts. We would call it a cloudburst. In that country, it's just a kind of an afternoon rainfall. But it was bad enough that everybody went scurrying for cover, and there was none.
The media tents had to empty out because they told them to get out of the tents because of concerns about lightning strikes.
Yeah.
And media is complaining that they don't have computer access in a lot of spots there as well.
I'm sure that the appropriate media has all of the
Yes.
computer spots and coverage that they could possibly want. It is that other segments of the media that do not have all of the appropriate requirements.
Morning Joe's doing its show from a bar, I guess because they assume that
Couldn't get
most
in, yeah.
Democrats are drunkards. But
And okay, my favorite choice is Fox, and they're dealing out of a tent.
yeah,
Oh my goodness gracious!
and no one bothered to tell Fox yesterday they were supposed to evacuate during the storm.
They just stayed there and kept broadcasting.
they were thinking, well, if Steve Ducey gets electrocuted,
Yeah, big deal. We won't worry about that.
8:47. We have a caller with us.
Oh, good.
Caller, you're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. The Democrats aren't just ignoring our blue-collar unions and their families, but they are at war with them. They won't let them have wages and great benefits building the Keystone Pipeline that would help the economies of Canada and our country. A pipeline is safer than loading railroad cars and shipping it to the Canadian coast to be shipped over to China. I wish the GOP would run an ad listing all the unions that are affected and being cheated and list the wages and the benefits.
I think a lot of unions are voting Republican.
Exactly. I remember from a few years ago traveling up through the Dakotas, and we went past one particular location, and it must have been it was a huge stockpiling warehouse facility, open air, by the way, and they had pipe laid in there. We said, holy cow, somebody believes that we're going to build the Keystone Pipeline, because they had all the pipe staged right there. It was just off a rail line, and you could see the pipe. Well, it seemed like forever, but it just, there it was stacked up waiting to be put in the ground. And Obama just systematically has destroyed it and shut it down. And like you said in your first segment this morning, the EPA said not a problem. The Department of Interior said not a problem. He just said, no, we're not going to do it. And as a result, it destroyed the Prime Minister in Canada.
Stephen Harper.
Yeah, Harper, that's the guy's name. Yeah, thank you. Destroyed his chances for re-election, and we got Trudeau elected. Well, good gracious alive. How's that going to work for
Obama Jr. now running that country.
you? Yeah, right. Won't that be great?
We have another caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning.
Yes, Bill, I'm calling back, but I wanted to have a comment to Steve. Last convention, the Democratic National Convention, they booed God. They started this one out with a black choir singing "How Great Thou Art," if I'm not mistaken, and then they had a prayer. And I said to myself, any self-respecting person couldn't sit there and do that, knowing that one day you may be judged by your maker. And you say, you hypocritical bunch of whatever, and you just get sick of it, and you say, who believes this stuff? And I'll hang up.
And interesting, I think I missed that segment on the television. Sorry about that. But during the prayer, when they mentioned the name Hillary Clinton in the prayer, there was boos from the audience, even though it was a prayer. Not a speech, but a prayer. And I thought to myself, oh, good gracious alive. This is just, and another thing, if you go back and think for a moment of the panorama of the Republican convention and the number of American flags that were present around the room and on the stage, the night that Trump gave his acceptance speech, the whole background behind him was American flags. I didn't take time to count them, but as I looked at them, I thought to myself, he's got one for every state stacked up behind him across that stage. Well, that's just my little way of thinking about it. But a constant flow of American flags.
We have another caller.
Have we seen any American flags at the Democratic convention?
I know that one of the reporters from Fox got into an argument with someone carrying a red flag outside.
Yep, there was a Russian flag and there was a black flag.
Yeah.
But we don't see too many American flags.
They gave him a hard time about having a flag on his ball cap.
Yeah.
An American flag. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Good morning.
Steve, would you agree that it was such a beautiful thing, the diversity that we saw in the people yesterday at the convention? That was a beautiful sight. But when I watched the little bit I could attest to the Republican convention, there was nothing but old white people. Do you think they're going to be alive by the time election rolls around? I'm just wondering.
Well, I hadn't quite thought about that. So I guess I'm kind of wondering as well. And I don't know how now today I think they're supposed to have the Black Lives Matter segment.
Is Sheriff Clark, by the way, an old white guy?
I don't know.
Alan West, an old white guy?
Yeah, I'm sure Alan West is an old.
Martinez,
Yeah,
an old
he's
white
an old.
guy?
He's an old white guy, and Susana Martinez. I think, yeah, right.
Is Mary Fallon an old white guy from Oklahoma?
Yep.
I just want to mention that, but
Sure.
Of course, all the old white guys in this country have all the money and own all the businesses and provide all the jobs. But other than that,
Not a big deal.
right. We were talking earlier about the Republicans too. You had a comment about because it I guess the email scandal over the weekend with the Democrats, scandal a day Democrats, has obliterated it for the time being from the news cycle. But Ted Cruz, still a lot of people out there thinking, well, either he ruined his political career or he saved his career. But you were reading about an interesting take from Pat Buchanan on all of this.
Well, it's interesting. Buchanan is an old white guy, old enough to remember things like the 1964 Republican convention where they nominated Barry Goldwater.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the losers was a guy named Nelson Rockefeller.
Yes, I suffered under his rule in New York for many years.
I'm sure you did. and Buchanan made the statement at that particular convention. Nelson Rockefeller got up and just derided Goldwater. Terrible, awful situation. How can this possibly be? And another individual at that same convention got up and said, Barry Goldwater is our standard bearer. He's won the right to run for president, and we must get behind him and support him and give him all the attention. And Goldwater lost badly. I think he only won 1 or 2 states.
Yeah, it was, and everyone said the Republican Party was done.
Done, dead. But the guy, Nelson Rockefeller, berated and belittled and did not endorse Barry Goldwater. Nelson Rockefeller never won another election. However, the guy who said Goldwater is our standard bearer, we have to get behind him and carry the party and the man and make this a worthwhile effort, his name was Richard Nixon. And he won the presidential election twice after that. Nelson Rockefeller, we never heard about again.
And that's because Nixon campaigned diligently for Goldwater.
He worked very hard for Goldwater. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, blah, blah. That's how you fill your basket with IOUs. And you get out and you work hard and you carry the banner and then it was an awful thing. I'm old. I'm an old white guy too, and I'm old enough to remember listening to the radio. Didn't have a television then. I was just a poor college student, but listening to the radio and realizing that Barry Goldwater was going down to a crushing defeat, and saying to myself, "Holy cow! Why am I struggling so hard to accomplish these things? The world's going to fall apart right in front of my face, and woe is us, woe is us." Well, it didn't happen quite that way. Here we are now 50 years later, and we're still making progress down the highway. But I was just kind of devastated that Goldwater got so viciously defeated.
We have a caller with us. Go ahead.
Let's take
Finish
another
that
one.
thought.
I think Ted Cruz, for the most part, ended his political career that night on that. All he'd had to
At
done,
least beyond the Senate.
but he may be reelected to the Senate from Texas. However, the morning after, he had a news conference with the Texas delegation, and they hammered him. He did not get hardly any respect. They didn't boo him, but they just kind of would, yeah, woo,
It's like
yeah.
the Floridians with Debbie Wasserman-Schultz yesterday.
The they couldn't shut them up. They finally had to just escort her out of the room.
We have a caller with us. And caller, you're on the air. You're up next.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Is it just me, or is that last guy so ADD he can't even get his words straight? But he's saying that the Republican people are all old people. Is Bernie a young guy? Is Hillary a young person? I don't understand his train of thought, because he doesn't want to hear or bring up the fact that the opening of their delegate deal is turned into a fiasco of anything but email problems.
Well, golly, there's an 18-year-old member of the Republican committee right here in Twin Falls County.
That's right.
Well, yeah, I know, but they keep bringing up that the Republicans are old people.
Old white
every
guys.
Time I look at the Democrats, what do I see? Old, rich people.
That's
People
a good
with
point.
Wealth and power, but yet they don't want to talk about the fact that an email scandal caused all the problems at the beginning of their deal, and it's been plaguing them the whole time. But yet they have their heads in the sand and will not admit that the people at the top are corrupt. And what they don't understand is when they get the power they want, even the people below that got them in the office are going to be thrown under the bus.
You're exactly right. It's kind of like this concept of tolerance. Everybody demands a high degree of tolerance until they obtain all that they want, and then they become intolerant to everyone else. And I think you have an interesting point. They're just not.
We've got to wrap up, but I've got a great email from Rupert. Does anyone ever wonder how a nation like the U.S., with all the incredible and amazing people it has as its citizens, that the best female candidate the Dems can come up with is Hillary?
Oh, yeah, right. That's scary. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the week plays out. If it had been a Republican situation, they would never have shut up about the fact that the chairman of the National Committee was forced to resign at the outset of their quadrennial convention. Every 4 years, they have this major event, and they forced her to resign on the front steps of that convention. And you talk about throwing somebody under the bus. Now, I'm not a big fan of Debbie
And then
Schultz.
gave her a job with Hillary.
But that doesn't get any attention of any kind. It is downplayed and dismissed. We won't hear anything else about that this entire week.
We got to thank Steve. He'll be back Friday morning filling in for me right here on KLIX.